Every World War II naval film you have ever seen got it wrong. The decks were too clean. The uniforms were too white. The men looked too rested. Hollywood gave you heroes standing tall against the horizon, jaws set, eyes clear, not a stain on them. The real battleship was nothing like that. It was a floating city of sweat, rust, vermin, and noise, crammed with more than 1,000 men who had not slept in a clean bed or drawn a full breath of fresh air in months. The Navy knew, the studios knew, and for 80 years, nobody corrected the picture. Tonight, we are going to correct it. 20 truths about daily life aboard a World War II battleship that no film ever had the nerve to show you. And by number 1, you will understand why the men who lived it almost never talked about it. Now, before we dive in, tap that subscribe button and tell me down in the comments which one of these you think Hollywood tried hardest to bury. Hold that thought, because by the end, you may change your mind. We went back to Navy medical logs, damage reports, and first-hand crew accounts to build this list. Not the memoirs written for publishers. The letters home, the sick bay records, the things men said when nobody was polishing the story. Here is what we found. Number 20. The clothes never came off. In the movies, sailors change into dress whites for dinner and press dungarees for duty. On an actual battleship, an enlisted man wore the same set of work clothes for weeks at a stretch. There was no laundry service below the rank of officer. Salt spray soaked the fabric. Sweat dried and soaked it again. The cotton went stiff as canvas and chafed the skin underneath until boils opened. Ship medical logs from the Pacific Theater list hundreds of cases of what the corpsmen called crotch rot. Fungal infections that spread across the groin and inner thighs in the tropical humidity. Some men cut the seats out of their own underwear just to stop the rubbing. Others gave up on underwear entirely and never mentioned it in a letter home. The Navy did not issue enough changes of clothing for the length of a deployment. Everyone aboard knew it. Nobody fixed it. Number 19. Saltwater was your only bath. Freshwater aboard a battleship went to the boilers first and the crew last. That was not a suggestion. That was policy. Men washed with cold seawater pumped through deck hoses using a Navy-issued saltwater soap that barely produced a lather and left a sticky gray film on the skin. You never felt clean. You just felt wet and then dry and then worse. Some men went 2 or 3 weeks between any kind of wash at all. After a few days, the smell became part of you. You stopped noticing it. But when replacement crews came aboard from shore stations, the first thing they noticed was the smell. Every veteran who served on a battleship remembers that moment. The new man's face when he stepped below decks for the first time and realized what he had signed up for. Number 18. Your bed belonged to 2 other men. They called it hot racking. 3 sailors shared one bunk in rotating 8-hour shifts. You climbed into a canvas rack, still warm and damp from the man who just left it. The racks were stacked 4 high with maybe 18 inches of clearance above your chest. You could not sit up. You could not roll over without hitting the man beside you. The air between the racks was dead still and thick with breath. There was no darkness because the red battle lights never went off. There was no quiet because the engines vibrated through the steel frame and into your spine every second of every hour. Sleep was not rest. It was just the absence of duty. And when the watch bell rang, you gave your rack to the next man and started again. Number 17. The cockroaches owned the ship, and the Navy knew it. This was not a pest problem. It was an occupation. Aboard the USS North Carolina, crew members reported roaches crawling across their faces while they slept. inside their ears, between the pages of letters they kept in their breast pockets, roaches in the bread locker, roaches floating in the coffee, roaches inside the headphones at the radio station. The Navy tried fumigation. A ship would seal its compartments, pump in chemical fog, and sweep out thousands of dead insects. Within a week, the population was back. The eggs survived every treatment the Navy had. After a while, men stopped complaining. You learned to shake out your shoes, check your cup, and brush off your bunk before you lay down. That was the system. The cockroaches were permanent crew. Remember, we are just getting started here. The daily grind aboard these ships was foul enough. But the further down this list we go, the harder it gets to believe anyone made it home at all. Number 16. The food was survival, not a meal. Fresh provisions lasted maybe 3 days after leaving port. After that, everything came from a can, a sack, or a powder. Powdered eggs that smelled like sulfur when they hit the griddle. A canned meat loaf the crew called horsecock because of the shape and texture. Bread baked on board that went stale in the humidity before the next watch started. And the flour had weevils. Navy cooks were instructed to sift the weevils out before baking. Not discard the flour, sift and bake. The signature dish of the wartime Navy was chipped beef on toast, known to every man who served as something unprintable. It kept you moving. It did not keep you happy. After weeks of canned rations in a Pacific summer, some men could not eat at all. They just drank coffee and smoked and waited for the next port. Number 15. The rats ate better than the crew did. They were bold. They were fat. They lived in the food storage compartments and chewed through supply bags overnight. They nested in ventilation ducts and ran across sleeping men in the berthing spaces. Aboard the USS Pennsylvania, medical records show sailors treated for rat bites in sickbay on a recurring basis. Some captains offered bounties, a pack of cigarettes for every rat tail brought to the duty officer. Men fashioned traps out of tin cans and wire. It barely mattered. The ship was a warm, enclosed, endlessly supplied habitat. The rats had no reason to leave and no predator aboard that could match their breeding rate. They were not stowaways, they were residents, and they outlasted every man who served on that hull. Number 14. Seasickness earned you nothing but contempt. You would think a 40,000-ton battleship would ride steady in the water. It does not. In heavy North Atlantic swells, even a ship that size rolled enough to knock men off their feet. Green sailors vomited for days. The smell of vomit in a sealed compartment mixed with diesel fumes and paint solvent and turned seasickness into something contagious. Men threw up because the man next to them threw up. No one was excused from watch. You stood your post, or you stood your post, while retching into a bucket between your boots. During convoy escort runs across the North Atlantic in winter, even seasoned petty officers got sick. The Navy's medical guidance was to keep working and keep drinking water. That was the treatment. There was no sympathy aboard a warship. There was only the next watch. Number 13. The head was a public act of humiliation. The toilets aboard a World War II battleship were long metal troughs with a continuous saltwater sluice running underneath. No doors, no partitions, no privacy. You sat shoulder to shoulder with the men from your division and did your business in the open. But the worst part was the blowback. When the seas were rough or the pressure in the system shifted, the troughs could erupt upward without warning. Men learned fast to check conditions before sitting down. And every crew had the prankster who lit a wad of toilet paper and floated it down the trough under the row of seated men. The screaming could be heard 2 compartments away. Veterans tell that story with a grin now. At the time, it was one more small indignity in a life that was already stripped of every comfort a man could name. We are halfway down the list now, and everything above this point was just the baseline, the normal, the daily texture of a life that Hollywood replaced with polished brass and pressed cotton. Below this line, the ship itself starts working against you. Number 12. The engine rooms were a furnace that never shut off. Below the water line, in the boiler and fire rooms, temperatures hit 120 degrees and sometimes climbed higher. The men who worked there, firemen, water tenders, machinists' mates, did 4-hour shifts in heat that would drop a man on a construction site today. Communication was impossible over the roar of the boilers. Everything was done by hand signal. Men came up from the fire room drenched, shaking, sometimes collapsing on the ladder before they reached the main deck. These were the men who kept the ship moving. Without them, every gun was silent, and every sailor was adrift. Hollywood never once set a scene in the fire room. Not once. Because it does not look like war. It looks like a steel mill with no windows and no exit. Number 11. Fresh water could vanish without warning. The ship's evaporators converted seawater into fresh water for the boilers. When a unit broke down or demand outpaced production, drinking water was rationed. In the Pacific, that meant a single canteen per man per day in heat that could reach 110 on the open deck. Bathing water was cut first, then laundry, then the drinking fountains, the scuttlebutts, went dry. Men lined up with tin cups. During multiple Pacific engagements, ships went on emergency water rations for days at a stretch. Your mouth cracked, your lips split, and the ocean was right there. Millions of gallons of water you could not drink, stretching to the horizon in every direction. Number 10. The smell was a living thing no camera could capture. Stack everything above this number together. Unwashed men, open troughs, rancid cooking grease, fuel oil soaked into every surface, cordite residue after gunnery drills, cigarette smoke in compartments with no ventilation, paint fumes, mildew in the canvas racks. And understand that below decks, the AIR did not move. It sat. It thickened. It became something you could taste on your tongue. New men coming aboard from shore gagged. After a week, you stopped smelling it. After a month, you were the smell. No war film has ever recreated this because no screen can carry it. But every man who served below decks on a battleship remembers it as the first thing that comes back when someone asks about the war. Number 9. Your teeth rotted and nobody came. Dental care aboard a wartime battleship was a luxury the Navy could not staff. One dentist, sometimes just a pharmacist's mate, with a pair of extraction pliers for more than 1,000 men. Toothaches went untreated for weeks. When an extraction finally happened, it was done with local anesthetic, if supplies allowed, and without, if they did not. Wartime dental records show epidemic levels of tooth loss among enlisted sailors who served 18-month deployments without shore leave. Men came home missing teeth they had when they enlisted. The VA did not always connect it to service. The Navy did not always document it. You just learned to chew on one side of your mouth and keep going. Number 8. The guns took your hearing, and the Navy never said sorry. When the main battery fired 16-inch guns on a battleship like the Iowa or the Missouri, the concussive blast ruptured eardrums. The Navy issued cotton wadding. That was the hearing protection program. Men who served in or near the gun turrets came home partially or completely deaf in one or both ears. After the war, veterans filed disability claims with the VA. Most were denied. The damage was classified as pre-existing or unrelated. It took decades for the government to acknowledge what every man on a gun crew already knew. The ship did this to them. The ship they served on and were proud of took something from them that never came back. Number 7. At battle stations, your body stopped being yours. When general quarters sounded, every man went to his assigned station and stayed there for hours, sometimes for an entire day. There were no bathroom breaks, no meals beyond whatever could be passed hand to hand down a corridor. Men urinated into buckets at their posts. Some used empty shell casings. Some had nothing and just endured. During the Okinawa campaign, crews on the picket line destroyers and their escorting battleships stood at battle stations for 36 hours straight. Kamikazes came in waves. There was no pause. There was no relief watch. You stood your post until the attack ended or until you could not stand anymore. Your body and its needs stopped mattering the second that klaxon went off. The Navy expected it. The men delivered it. Nobody filmed it. This is where the list turns. Everything above this point was about endurance. Below this line, we are talking about damage that does not heal. Number 6. Burns were the signature wound of naval combat, and the cruelest one. Hollywood shows you the explosion, the fireball, the dramatic impact. It does not show you what happened next. A steam line rupture inside a sealed compartment released superheated steam at 600 degrees. It cooked men alive where they stood. A cordite flash from a propellant charge left sailors with their skin hanging off their arms in sheets. Survivors from the USS Franklin and the USS Indianapolis described burn wards where men begged the corpsman to let them die rather than endure another round of debridement. The dead skin had to be scraped away by hand, often without morphine because the morphine was already gone. Navy medical reports called burn treatment the single cruelest duty a corpsman faced in the Pacific War. The films show fire. They never show what fire leaves behind. Number 5. Surgery aboard a battleship was butchery performed by desperate men doing their best. When battle damage filled the sick bay, operations happened on mess tables in compartments that were rocking, dimly lit, and sometimes taking on water. The surgeons, when there were surgeons, worked with whatever they had left. Pharmacists' mates performed amputations they had only read about in training manuals. Aboard the USS South Dakota, during the naval battle of Guadalcanal in November 1942, the medical team treated dozens of casualties simultaneously while supplies ran out around them. The morphine syrettes went first. After that, men bit down on rolled cloth or leather and held on. There was no sterile field. There was no proper anesthesia. There was a man on a table and another man with a saw trying to save his life before the next salvo hit. Number 4. They sealed the hatches with men still alive on the other side. Watertight integrity was the law aboard a warship. When a compartment flooded, standing orders required the hatches to be dogged shut, sealed, regardless of who was still inside. Sometimes the men on the other side were still alive, still pounding on the steel, still screaming. The men who turned the locking dogs knew exactly what they were doing. They did it anyway, because losing one compartment meant saving the ship, and losing the ship meant losing everyone. Aboard the USS Oklahoma at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, men were trapped below decks in capsized compartments. Rescue teams heard tapping on the hull for days. Some were cut free, some were not. The men who sealed those hatches carried that weight for the rest of their lives. They never called themselves heroes. They called themselves the ones who had to choose. Number 3. Kamikaze cleanup was the duty nobody talks about, and no film has ever shown. After the fires were out and the wounded were carried below, someone had to clear the deck. Human remains, Japanese and American, mixed with aviation fuel, molten aluminum, and melted steel across the gun mounts and deck plates. Sailors as young as 17 were handed buckets, mops, and steel scrapers and told to make the deck operational so the guns could fire again. Survivors from the USS Bunker Hill and the USS Laffey described hosing body parts off weapon stations, picking up pieces of men they had eaten breakfast with that morning. No one debriefed them. No one offered counseling. The word did not exist yet in the Navy vocabulary. The order was simple: clean it up, stand your watch. And they did. And then they did it again the next day when the next wave came in. Number 2. Burial at sea was not the ceremony you saw in the movie. In combat conditions, there was no chaplain standing at the rail reading scripture over a flag-draped body on a calm blue morning. Men were sewn into canvas with a 5-inch shell casing at their feet and slid over the side between engagements. Sometimes dozens in a single afternoon. When canvas ran short, bodies went over without it. When time ran short, the dead were stacked in the ship's cold storage locker alongside the food supply until a break in action allowed disposal. During the battles off Okinawa and Leyte Gulf, the dead outnumbered the living's ability to handle them with anything resembling dignity. The men who sewed the canvas said the same thing in interview after interview, decades later. The faces stayed with them longer than any battle did. And number 1. This is the one Hollywood could never film because it did not happen on a ship. It happened in kitchens, in bedrooms, in VA waiting rooms, in decades of silence that stretched across an entire generation. The men who came home from those battleships carried the ship with them, fuel oil that never fully washed out of the pores of their hands. Hearing damage that made every family dinner a struggle. The smell of burning paint that hit them without warning on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in 1953. They showered 2 and 3 times a day and could not explain why. They flinched at engine backfires. They could not eat canned food. They woke in the dark and checked the hatches that were not there. Hollywood gave them dress whites and ailey heroes welcome on a sunny pier. The truth was a man sitting alone at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning, staring at nothing, unable to tell his wife what he saw because the words did not exist for it and because she would never be able to unhear them. 80 years later, we are still watching the Hollywood version. Clean decks, bright flags, a salute, and a swell of music. The men who actually served never corrected the picture. They just let it stand, because the real one was too heavy to hand to anyone who was not there.